Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her ghillie suit one final time as the convoy of black SUVs disappeared into the shimmering heat waves of the Mojave Desert. The FBI briefing had been clear. 3 weeks of surveillance indicated that the Vargas crime family had established a major drug processing facility in an abandoned mining compound 40 miles from the nearest road. What made this operation particularly dangerous was the family's reputation for extreme violence and their leader's paranoid security measures. Maria had earned her position as the Bureau's premier long-range specialist through 15 years of military service, including 3 tours in Afghanistan, where her record of 127 confirmed eliminations had made her a legend among special operations units. At 38, she possessed the rare combination of patience, precision, and tactical awareness that made her invaluable for high-stakes operations where failure meant death for undercover agents or civilians. The mission parameters were straightforward but unforgiving. Intelligence indicated that Ramon Vargas, the family patriarch, would be conducting a major meeting with cartel representatives from Mexico in 3 days. The compound's isolated location and heavy security made a traditional raid impossible. Instead, Maria would eliminate specific high-value targets during the meeting, creating enough chaos to allow a coordinated assault by tactical teams positioned 20 miles away. Maria's hide site was a natural depression in the rocky terrain, approximately 1,200 meters from the compound's main building. She had spent the previous night carefully constructing her position, using desert camouflage netting and natural vegetation to create an invisible nest that would protect her from both visual detection and thermal imaging. Her Barrett M82A1 rifle, capable of engaging targets at extreme range, was already zeroed and ready. The desert environment presented unique challenges that separated experienced operators from novices. Daytime temperatures regularly exceeded 115 degrees Fahrenheit, while nighttime temperatures dropped to near freezing. Heat mirages could distort targets at long range, requiring constant adjustment of aiming points. Most critically, the dry air and rocky terrain meant that even the slightest movement could create dust clouds visible for miles. Maria's ghillie suit was specifically designed for desert operations, incorporating tan and brown fibers that matched the local terrain. Beneath the camouflage, she wore moisture-wicking base layers and a cooling vest that would help regulate her body temperature during the long hours of motionless observation. Her equipment included enough water for 72 hours, high-energy rations, and a waste management system that would prevent her from compromising the hide site. The compound below buzzed with activity as Vargas's men prepared for the important meeting. Through her high-powered spotting scope, Maria could observe guards patrolling the perimeter, workers moving equipment, and vehicles arriving with supplies. The main building, a converted mining office, showed signs of recent fortification with steel plates welded over windows and what appeared to be firing ports cut into the walls. Intelligence reports indicated that Ramon Vargas had survived 4 previous assassination attempts, making him extremely cautious about security. His personal bodyguards were former military personnel from various Latin American special forces units. The compound's defenses included motion sensors, thermal cameras, and at least 6 heavily armed guards on constant patrol. Maria's first task was to identify and catalog every person entering the compound. Each face was photographed using her rifle's integrated digital scope, and the images were transmitted via encrypted satellite link to the FBI's Tactical Operations Center. This intelligence would be crucial for identifying targets and ensuring that no law enforcement personnel were accidentally engaged during the operation. As the sun reached its zenith, the temperature inside Maria's hide site climbed above 120 degrees. She controlled her breathing carefully, taking small sips of warm water and adjusting her position millimeters at a time to prevent muscle cramps. The ghillie suit trapped heat against her body, but removing it would compromise her concealment. This was the price of precision, hours of discomfort for moments of decisive action. Through her scope, Maria watched as a convoy of armored vehicles approached the compound from the south. The lead vehicle flew Mexican flags, confirming that the cartel representatives were arriving as scheduled. She counted 8 men exiting the vehicles, all armed with automatic weapons and moving with the disciplined coordination of professional soldiers. Ramon Vargas emerged from the main building to greet his guests personally. Maria studied his face through the scope, comparing it to the photographs in her mission briefing. The man was smaller than she had expected, perhaps 5 feet 6 inches tall, but his posture and the deference shown by his subordinates confirmed his authority. He wore an expensive white linen suit that seemed impractical for the desert environment, suggesting either supreme confidence or dangerous arrogance. The greeting ceremony lasted approximately 30 minutes, during which Maria maintained constant observation while documenting the positions of guards and identifying potential escape routes. The compound's layout included 3 buildings connected by covered walkways, 2 guard towers, and what appeared to be an underground bunker entrance near the main structure. As afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Maria noticed increased radio chatter among the guards. Their patrol patterns became more rigid, and additional sentries took positions on rooftops. The heightened security suggested that the actual meeting would begin soon, probably after sunset when thermal imaging would be less effective for detecting approaching threats. Maria's earpiece crackled with an encrypted transmission from her handler. Agent Peterson's voice was barely audible above the static, but his message was clear. Satellite imagery indicated that additional vehicles were approaching from multiple directions. The meeting was larger than originally anticipated, with representatives from at least 3 major criminal organizations converging on the compound. This development changed the tactical situation significantly. More targets meant more opportunities, but it also increased the risk of collateral damage and complicated the extraction plan. Maria would need to prioritize her targets carefully, focusing on individuals whose elimination would create maximum disruption to the criminal organizations while avoiding anyone who might be an undercover law enforcement officer. As darkness approached, Maria began her final preparations. She checked her rifle's 0-1 last time, confirmed that her communications equipment was functioning properly, and reviewed the target list that had been updated based on the day's intelligence gathering. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of weeks of planning and years of training. In the unforgiving desert environment, there would be no second chances. The second day began before dawn as Maria conducted her morning reconnaissance routine. Through her night vision scope, she observed the compound's security patterns during the shift change, noting how the guards moved between positions and identifying potential blind spots in their coverage. The criminal organizations had established a surprisingly professional security protocol with overlapping fields of observation and regular communication checks. Maria's position remained undetected, but she knew that maintaining concealment became more challenging with each passing hour. Desert animals left tracks that could be misinterpreted as human activity, and the constant wind threatened to disturb her carefully arranged camouflage. She made microscopic adjustments to her hide site while documenting the compound's activities in a detailed logbook that would be crucial for the tactical team's assault plan. Through her spotting scope, Maria watched as workers began modifying the compound's main building. They installed additional steel plating around what appeared to be a conference room, and technicians set up sophisticated communication equipment, including satellite dishes and signal boosters. The preparations suggested that the meeting would involve real-time coordination with criminal operations across multiple countries. The most significant development came at mid-morning when a helicopter landed near the compound's southern perimeter. Maria immediately focused her scope on the aircraft, identifying it as a modified Bell 429 with no visible registration numbers. The helicopter's passengers included 2 men in expensive suits who were greeted with the same deference shown to Ramon Vargas, indicating their high status within the criminal hierarchy. Agent Peterson's voice crackled through Maria's earpiece with updated intelligence. The FBI had identified one of the new arrivals as Eduardo Castellanos, a Mexican cartel leader responsible for over 300 murders and the primary target of a joint DFBI investigation. His presence at the meeting confirmed that this was more than a routine business discussion. It represented a major consolidation of criminal power that could affect drug trafficking throughout the southwestern United States. Maria photographed every face she could observe, using her rifle's digital scope to capture high-resolution images that were immediately transmitted to the FBI's facial recognition database. The process revealed the presence of several individuals who were previously unknown to law enforcement, suggesting that this meeting included criminal leaders who had successfully maintained their anonymity despite years of investigation. The compound's security became increasingly sophisticated throughout the day. Guards installed additional thermal imaging cameras, and Maria noticed the deployment of what appeared to be electronic countermeasures designed to detect surveillance equipment. She powered down her non-essential electronics and relied primarily on passive observation to avoid detection by the security sweeps. As the temperature climbed toward its daily peak, Maria faced the physical challenges that had ended the careers of many surveillance specialists. The combination of extreme heat, motionless positioning, and the psychological pressure of maintaining perfect concealment tested every aspect of her training. She regulated her breathing using techniques learned during survival school, taking measured sips of water while monitoring her body's hydration levels. The afternoon brought increased activity as more vehicles arrived at the compound. Maria counted representatives from at least 5 different criminal organizations, each accompanied by heavily armed security details. The parking area near the main building resembled a military compound, with armored SUVs positioned to provide cover and multiple escape routes. Maria's most challenging moment came when a guard patrol approached within 200 meters of her hide site. Through her scope, she watched the 2 men sweep the area with handheld thermal detectors while their radio chatter indicated they were investigating an unspecified anomaly. Maria remained absolutely motionless, controlling even her breathing to minimize her thermal signature while the guard spent 20 minutes examining the terrain around her position. The patrol eventually moved on, but their proximity confirmed that the criminals were taking security seriously. Maria made a mental note to recommend enhanced concealment techniques for future operations in similar environments. The close call also reminded her that extraction might be more complicated than originally planned, especially if the tactical assault triggered a comprehensive security lockdown. Evening preparations at the compound revealed the scope of the criminal meeting. Workers set up a large tent adjacent to the main building, and catering trucks arrived with enough food for what appeared to be a multi-day conference. The infrastructure suggested that this was not a simple negotiation, but rather a strategic planning session for coordinated criminal activities. Maria's earpiece crackled with another transmission from Agent Peterson. Satellite intelligence indicated that additional aircraft were approaching the area, including what appeared to be a military-style transport helicopter. The FBI was repositioning its tactical teams to account for the increased security presence, but the timeline for the operation remained unchanged. As darkness fell, Maria observed the compound's transformation into what resembled a small military base. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter, guards took positions in elevated firing positions, and vehicles were arranged to create defensive barriers. The criminals had clearly learned from previous law enforcement operations and were determined to prevent any surprise attacks. The main building's windows glowed with activity as the criminal leaders gathered for preliminary discussions. Maria could observe silhouettes moving within the conference room, but the steel plating and bulletproof glass made it impossible to identify specific individuals or overhear conversations. She would need to wait for the outdoor portions of the meeting to engage her targets. Maria's final task for the day was to update her target priority list based on the intelligence gathered. Eduardo Castellanos remained the primary target due to his involvement in multiple ongoing investigations. Ramon Vargas was designated as the secondary target, followed by 2 other cartel leaders whose elimination would disrupt major drug trafficking operations. The rules of engagement were clear. Maria would only fire when she could positively identify her targets, and ensure minimal risk to any undercover law enforcement personnel who might be present. Each shot would need to be precisely placed to guarantee immediate incapacitation while avoiding damage to the building's structure that might trap innocent workers or informants. As she settled in for her second night of surveillance, Maria reviewed the meteorological data for the following day. Wind conditions would be minimal during the early morning hours, providing optimal conditions for long-range precision shooting. The temperature differential between her position and the compound would create slight heat mirages, but she had already calculated the necessary adjustments to compensate for optical distortion. The compound maintained heightened security throughout the night, with guards conducting hourly perimeter sweeps and random patrols of the surrounding terrain. Maria remained motionless in her hide site, using passive night vision equipment to monitor their movements while conserving battery power for the critical phases of tomorrow's operation. Her final transmission of the day confirmed her position and readiness for the main phase of the operation. The tactical teams were in position 20 miles away, waiting for her signal to begin their approach. Weather conditions remained favorable, and all equipment was functioning within normal parameters. Tomorrow would determine whether months of planning and intelligence gathering would result in a successful operation against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in North America. The third day dawned with perfect conditions for long-range shooting. The air was still, the sky clear, and the temperature differential between Maria's position and the compound created minimal atmospheric disturbance. She had awakened 2 hours before sunrise to conduct her final equipment checks and review the updated intelligence that had arrived during the night. Agent Peterson's overnight briefing contained crucial information about the meeting's agenda. Intercepted communications indicated that the criminal leaders would gather outside the main building at approximately 10 o'clock for what their security personnel described as a coordination ceremony. Intelligence analysts believed this would involve the signing of territorial agreements and the formal establishment of a drug trafficking alliance that could flood American cities with narcotics. Maria's Barrett M82A1 rifle was perfectly zeroed for the 1,200-meter distance to the compound. She had loaded her magazine with match-grade ammunition specifically selected for the environmental conditions, and her ballistic computer confirmed the precise holdover adjustments needed for each potential target location. The rifle suppressor would reduce the sound signature, but at this distance, the sonic crack of the bullet would still be audible to anyone near the impact point. Through her spotting scope, Maria observed increased activity at the compound as workers prepared for the outdoor ceremony. They erected a covered platform near the main building's entrance and positioned chairs for what appeared to be 8 to 10 participants. Security guards took elevated positions with clear fields of fire covering all approaches to the ceremonial area. The first challenge of the day came when Maria noticed a guard patrol using a different search pattern that brought them uncomfortably close to her hide site. She remained motionless as the two men approached within 150 meters, their thermal imaging equipment sweeping methodically across the terrain. Her ghillie suit and carefully controlled body heat kept her concealed, but the close approach reminded her that the criminals were maintaining professional security standards. At 9:30, the criminal leaders began emerging from the main building to prepare for their ceremony. Maria immediately began identifying and photographing each individual, comparing their faces to the target photographs in her mission briefing. Eduardo Castellanos was easily recognizable despite his attempt to disguise his appearance with different clothing and sunglasses. Ramon Vargas appeared next, flanked by his personal bodyguard who positioned themselves to provide overlapping protective coverage. Maria noted that both primary targets were wearing what appeared to be lightweight body armor beneath their clothing, which would require precise shot placement to ensure immediate incapacitation. The ceremony began with formal introductions and what appeared to be a ritualistic exchange of documents. Maria maintained constant observation through her rifle scope while providing real-time intelligence to Agent Peterson and the tactical teams. The outdoor location was perfect for her mission. All targets were clearly visible without intervening obstacles. Maria's moment came when Eduardo Castellanos stepped away from the group to make a phone call. He positioned himself approximately 20 meters from the other participants, creating an opportunity for engagement without immediate risk to the remaining targets. Maria steadied her rifle, controlled her breathing, and placed her crosshairs on the center of Castellanos' upper torso. The Barrett's trigger broke cleanly, and the massive rifle bucked against Maria's shoulder as the .50 caliber round left the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second. Through her scope, Maria watched the bullet impact exactly where she had aimed, and Castellanos collapsed immediately. The other criminal leaders scattered toward the building while guards began shouting orders and searching for the source of the gunfire. Maria immediately shifted her aim to Ramon Vargas, who was being hustled toward the building entrance by his bodyguards. The moving target required a more complex shot, but Maria's experience with dynamic engagements allowed her to lead the target properly and place her second round with lethal precision. Vargas stumbled and fell just steps from the building's entrance. The compound erupted into chaos as guards began spraying automatic weapons fire in random directions, while others attempted to locate Maria's position using thermal imaging equipment. She remained motionless in her hide site, knowing that movement would immediately reveal her location to the sophisticated surveillance systems the criminals had deployed. Agent Peterson's voice crackled through her earpiece with confirmation that both primary targets had been eliminated. Satellite imagery showed that the tactical teams were beginning their approach to the compound, but they would need 20 minutes to reach assault positions. Maria's job now was to remain concealed while providing intelligence on the compound's defensive response. The criminals' reaction demonstrated their professional training and experience with violent confrontations. Instead of panicking, they established defensive positions and began systematically searching for threats. Guards moved in coordinated teams, while others used vehicles to create improvised barriers around the main building. Maria observed the evacuation of the remaining criminal leaders, who were being moved to armored vehicles under heavy guard. Her mission parameters did not include engaging targets during their escape unless specifically ordered, so she documented their movements while remaining hidden in her observation post. The most dangerous moment came when a guard patrol began methodically searching the exact terrain where Maria was concealed. She could hear their voices as they approached her position, discussing thermal anomalies detected by their surveillance equipment. Maria controlled her breathing and remained absolutely motionless as the guards examined the ground within 10 meters of her hide site. The searchers spent 15 minutes investigating her area before moving on to examine other potential sniper positions. Maria's camouflage and heat discipline had prevented detection, but the close call demonstrated the criminals' determination to locate and eliminate the threat that had killed their leaders. Through her scope, Maria watched as the tactical team's assault began with diversionary explosions at the compound's southern perimeter. The remaining guards immediately shifted their attention toward the obvious threat, abandoning their search for Maria's position as they prepared to defend against the ground assault. The FBI's tactical assault unfolded with precision as teams approached the compound from multiple directions. Maria provided real-time intelligence on guard positions and defensive preparations, helping the assault teams avoid prepared ambush positions and identify the safest routes to their objectives. As gunfire erupted throughout the compound, Maria maintained her observation post while documenting the tactical team's progress. Her role had shifted from offensive action to intelligence support, but her position remained valuable for providing overwatch and early warning of any threats the ground teams might miss. The compound's defenders fought with desperate determination, using their knowledge of the terrain and prepared positions to slow the tactical team's advance. However, the loss of their leadership and the surprise nature of the assault had disrupted their coordination, making effective resistance increasingly difficult. Maria's final action of the engagement came when she observed a group of guards attempting to establish a heavy machine gun position that would threaten the advancing tactical teams. Her third shot eliminated the machine gunner, preventing what could have been significant casualties among the FBI personnel. The battle for the compound continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The elimination of the criminal leadership had broken the defenders' coordination, and the tactical team's superior training and equipment gradually overcame all resistance. Maria remained in her hide site throughout the engagement, providing continuous intelligence support until the compound was declared secure. As the immediate tactical situation stabilized, Maria began preparing for extraction while continuing to monitor the surrounding terrain for any remaining threats. Her mission had been successful. Both primary targets had been eliminated, the criminal meeting had been disrupted, and the tactical assault had proceeded without significant friendly casualties. The compound had fallen silent except for the methodical sounds of the FBI tactical teams securing the area and processing evidence. Maria remained in her hide site, maintaining overwatch while the teams conducted their search operations. Her position provided an excellent vantage point for detecting any remaining threats or attempts by surviving criminals to escape through the desert terrain. Agent Peterson's voice came through her earpiece with an update on the tactical situation. The compound had yielded a treasure trove of intelligence, including financial records, communication equipment, and detailed plans for drug trafficking operations throughout the southwestern United States. The surviving criminals were being processed for interrogation, though many had chosen to remain silent pending the arrival of their attorneys. Maria's immediate concern was her own extraction, which had become complicated by the presence of news helicopters circling the area at high altitude. The media attention meant that her extraction would need to be carefully coordinated to avoid compromising her identity or revealing the FBI's long-range surveillance capabilities to future criminal targets. Through her scope, Maria observed the tactical team's systematic search of the compound's buildings. They moved with practiced efficiency, clearing each room and documenting evidence while maintaining security against potential booby traps or hidden defenders. The operation's success was evident in the lack of resistance and the quantity of material being collected for analysis. The most significant discovery came when the teams located the underground bunker that Maria had identified during her initial surveillance. The facility contained sophisticated communications equipment, large quantities of cash in multiple currencies, and what appear to be detailed intelligence files on law enforcement personnel involved in narcotics investigations. This intelligence coup would provide the basis for follow-up operations against the broader criminal network. Maria's role shifted to long-range security as the tactical teams expanded their search perimeter. Her elevated position and high-powered optics made her ideal for detecting any approaching threats or surveillance attempts by other criminal organizations that might be monitoring the operation's progress. The extraction plan required Maria to remain in position until nightfall, when a helicopter could retrieve her under cover of darkness. This meant enduring several more hours in the desert heat while maintaining constant vigilance against potential threats. Her water reserves were adequate, but the psychological strain of remaining motionless for extended periods tested her mental discipline. During the afternoon, Maria observed the arrival of additional FBI personnel, including forensic specialists and intelligence analysts. The compound was being transformed into a crime scene processing center, with teams systematically documenting every aspect of the facility's operation. The scope of the investigation suggested that this case would have implications far beyond the immediate arrests. Agent Peterson provided periodic updates on the intelligence being gathered from the compound. The criminal organization had been planning a significant expansion of their operations, including the establishment of processing facilities in 3 additional states. The elimination of the leadership had disrupted these plans, but follow-up investigations would be necessary to prevent other groups from filling the vacuum. Maria's most challenging moment came when she observed a civilian aircraft conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance flights over the area. The aircraft made multiple passes at different altitudes, suggesting either media interest or surveillance by other criminal organizations. She documented the aircraft's registration numbers and flight patterns while maintaining her concealment. The compound's communication equipment had provided the FBI with real-time access to the criminal network's operations. Intelligence analysts were monitoring phone calls and electronic communications as other criminal organizations reacted to the news of the leadership's elimination. This intelligence would be crucial for preventing retaliatory actions and identifying new targets for investigation. As evening approached, Maria began preparing for her extraction while maintaining her surveillance responsibilities. The tactical teams had established a secure perimeter around the compound, but the desert environment still presented numerous opportunities for observation or attack by hostile forces. The extraction helicopter arrived precisely on schedule, approaching Maria's position using terrain masking to avoid detection by any remaining surveillance assets. The pilot had extensive experience with special operations insertions and extractions, allowing for a quick pickup that minimized Maria's exposure during the transition from her hide site to the aircraft. Maria's departure from the hide site required careful coordination to avoid leaving evidence of her presence. She had spent 3 days in the position, and any traces of her occupation could compromise future surveillance operations in similar environments. The extraction team included specialists trained in sanitizing surveillance sites to intelligence community standards. The helicopter flight back to the FBI's forward operating base provided Maria with her first opportunity to relax since the mission began. The adrenaline from the successful engagement was beginning to fade, replaced by the fatigue that inevitably followed extended periods of high-stress operation. However, her job was not yet complete. She would need to participate in extensive debriefings and after-action reviews. Agent Peterson met Maria at the landing site with preliminary feedback on the mission's success. Both primary targets had been confirmed eliminated, and the intelligence gathered from the compound was already being analyzed by specialists from multiple agencies. The operation would likely be classified as one of the most significant law enforcement successes against organized crime in recent years. The debriefing process began immediately with medical personnel conducting a standard post-mission health assessment. 3 days in the desert environment had taken a physical toll despite Maria's preparation and experience. Dehydration and heat exhaustion were constant threats during extended surveillance operations, requiring careful monitoring and recovery procedures. Maria's preliminary debriefing focused on the tactical aspects of the operation, including the effectiveness of her equipment, the adequacy of the intelligence provided, and recommendations for future similar missions. Her feedback would be incorporated into training programs and operational procedures used by other FBI surveillance specialists. The intelligence analysts were particularly interested in Maria's observations of the compound's security measures and the criminals' reaction to the sniper attacks. Her detailed notes and photographs would be studied to improve understanding of how criminal organizations adapt their security procedures in response to law enforcement operations. As the initial debriefing concluded, Agent Peterson briefed Maria on the broader implications of the mission's success. The elimination of the criminal leadership had disrupted a major drug trafficking network, but it had also created opportunities for other organizations to expand their operations. Follow-up investigations would be necessary to prevent the emergence of even more dangerous criminal groups. The mission's success would remain classified to protect both Maria's identity and the FBI's operational capabilities. However, the intelligence gathered during the operation would be shared with partner agencies and international law enforcement organizations to maximize its impact on global crime-fighting efforts. Maria's final task was to prepare a comprehensive mission report documenting every aspect of her 3-day surveillance operation. This report would become part of the FBI's institutional knowledge base, providing guidance for future operations and contributing to the ongoing development of long-range surveillance techniques and technologies. 2 weeks after the desert operation, Maria sat in a secure conference room at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., participating in the final debriefing sessions with senior officials from multiple agencies. The intelligence gathered from the compound had exceeded all expectations, providing unprecedented insight into the structure and operations of major criminal organizations throughout North America and beyond. The forensic analysis of the compound's electronic equipment had revealed the existence of a sophisticated international network involving criminal groups from Mexico, Colombia, and Eastern Europe. The communication intercepts obtained during the operation were being used to identify previously unknown criminal leaders and plan coordinated international law enforcement actions. Agent Peterson presented Maria with the preliminary results of the follow-up investigations that had been triggered by her mission. Law enforcement agencies in 6 countries were conducting simultaneous operations based on the intelligence she had helped gather. The ripple effects of eliminating Eduardo Castellanos and Ramon Vargas were being felt throughout the international criminal community. The technical aspects of Maria's performance during the mission had impressed even the most experienced special operations personnel. Her ability to maintain concealment for 3 days in challenging environmental conditions while delivering precision fire at extreme range had validated the FBI's investment in advanced sniper training and equipment. Maria's mission report had been classified at the highest levels, but selected portions were being incorporated into training materials for federal law enforcement agencies and military special operations units. Her techniques for desert concealment and long-range surveillance would become standard instruction for personnel preparing for similar operations. The psychological evaluation that followed every high-stress mission confirmed that Maria had successfully managed the mental challenges of extended isolation and the responsibility of taking human lives in the line of duty. Her experience and training had prepared her well for the emotional aftermath of the operation, though she would continue to receive support from specialized counselors. The ballistics analysis of Maria's shots had provided valuable data for improving long-range shooting techniques and equipment. Her 3 successful engagements at 1,200 meters in challenging environmental conditions had demonstrated the effectiveness of the Barrett M82A1 rifle system and the specialized ammunition selected for the mission. Intelligence analysts briefed Maria on the broader impact of the criminal leadership's elimination. The power vacuum created by their deaths had led to internal conflicts within the criminal organizations, disrupting their operations and creating opportunities for law enforcement to infiltrate the remaining groups. The compound's financial records had revealed the scope of the criminal network's operations, including money laundering schemes involving banks in multiple countries and real estate investments worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Recovery of these assets would provide funding for additional law enforcement operations while denying resources to criminal organizations. Maria learned that her identity and role in the operation would remain classified indefinitely to protect her from potential retaliation. The criminal organizations involved had demonstrated a willingness to target law enforcement personnel and their families, making operational security a permanent concern for anyone involved in the mission. The equipment evaluation phase of the debriefing focused on improvements for future desert surveillance operations. Maria's recommendations for enhanced cooling systems, improved camouflage materials, and more efficient communication equipment were being incorporated into procurement plans for specialized surveillance units. Agent Peterson informed Maria that she was being considered for promotion to a supervisory role within the FBI's Tactical Operations Division. Her demonstrated expertise in long-range surveillance and precision shooting made her an ideal candidate for training other agents and developing advanced operational techniques. The international law enforcement coordination that had resulted from the mission represented a new model for combating transnational criminal organizations. The real-time intelligence sharing and coordinated operations that followed Maria's success had demonstrated the effectiveness of integrated approaches to complex criminal investigations. Maria's final briefing session included representatives from the DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshal Service, all of whom had benefited from the intelligence gathered during her mission. The interagency cooperation had been enhanced by the operation's success, creating new opportunities for joint operations against major criminal threats. The compound had been dismantled, and the site restored to its natural condition, but not before forensic teams had gathered every possible piece of evidence. The thoroughness of the evidence collection had been made possible by Maria's elimination of the security threats, allowing investigators to work without fear of attack. The criminal organization's communication intercepts had revealed plans for retaliatory actions against law enforcement personnel, confirming the importance of maintaining operational security around the mission's details. Additional security measures had been implemented to protect all personnel involved in the operation and their families. Maria's technical innovations during the mission had caught the attention of military special operations commanders who were interested in incorporating her techniques into their training programs. Her methods for maintaining concealment in desert environments were being studied by personnel preparing for operations in similar climates worldwide. The psychological impact of the leadership elimination on the remaining criminal organization members had been more significant than anticipated. Intercepted communications revealed widespread fear and paranoia, leading to operational mistakes that provided additional opportunities for law enforcement exploitation. The mission's success had validated the FBI's investment in advanced sniper capabilities and long-range surveillance techniques. Budget allocations for specialized equipment and training programs were being increased based on the demonstrated effectiveness of precision operations against high-value criminal targets. As the final debriefing concluded, Maria reflected on the broader significance of her 3 days in the desert. The elimination of 2 major criminal leaders had disrupted international drug trafficking networks, provided intelligence for dozens of follow-up operations, and demonstrated the effectiveness of precision law enforcement techniques against sophisticated criminal organizations. The commendation ceremony was held in private due to security concerns, but Maria received official recognition for her exceptional performance during one of the most challenging missions in FBI history. Her actions had protected countless potential victims from the violence and addiction that would have resulted from the criminals' planned expansion of their operations. Maria's next assignment would take her to a training facility where she would help develop the next generation of federal law enforcement snipers. Her experience in the desert would inform every aspect of the curriculum, ensuring that future agents would be even better prepared for the challenges of precision operations in hostile environments. The desert mission had ended, but its impact would be felt for years to come through the intelligence gathered, the criminals captured, and the techniques developed during those 3 decisive days when one woman's skill and determination had struck a decisive blow against international organized crime.